The little girl tugged his sleeve so hard it almost hurt. "Daddy, please help her," she whispered, eyes wide, voice shaking. Two men were closing in on a woman who looked like she had nowhere left to run. The rain had started without warning, the kind that soaked through jackets in seconds and turned the street into a blur of headlights and fear. Marcus Reed hated nights like this, not because of the cold, but because his daughter, Lily, hated them. Loud sounds, dark corners, strangers moving too fast. He kept her close, her small hand wrapped tightly around two of his fingers as they hurried past the bus stop on 14th Street. They were almost home. Marcus had worked a double shift at the warehouse. His back ached, his boots were soaked, and his only thought was getting Lily inside, warm, fed, and asleep. Being a single dad didn't allow for distractions. You learned to move forward, ignore the noise, survive. Then Lily stopped. Not slowed, stopped dead. "Daddy," she said again, quieter this time. Her grip tightened. "Look." Marcus followed her gaze. Across the street, under the flickering light of a closed convenience store, a woman was pressed against the brick wall. Her purse lay open on the wet ground, its contents spilled like evidence. Two men stood too close, one blocking her path, the other pacing, laughing softly like this was a game. Marcus felt it immediately. That tightening in the chest. The instinct he'd learned to bury. Not tonight. Not with Lily here. He turned his body slightly, shielding his daughter. "Don't look, baby. Come on." But Lily didn't move. "She's crying," Lily whispered. Marcus clenched his jaw. The woman was crying, silent, desperate, tears streaking down her face as she shook her head again and again. He couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He knew that look. He'd seen it once before, years ago, when Lily's mother had begged him not to leave her alone with someone who scared her. That memory burned. One of the men reached out and grabbed the woman's wrist. That was when Lily pulled free. "Daddy, please!" she cried, her voice breaking through the rain. "Please help her." The men turned. So did the woman. Every eye landed on Marcus Reed, a tall black man in a worn jacket, holding a pink backpack in one hand, rain dripping from his hair. Not a hero. Not a cop. Just a father who knew exactly how much he had to lose. Marcus stepped forward anyway. "Let her go," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried. The man holding the woman laughed. "Mind your business." Marcus moved Lily behind him, crouched just enough to meet her eyes. "Stay right here. Don't move. Don't say anything." "But I've got you," he said softly. Then he stood up straight. The second man took a step toward Marcus. "You trying to be brave?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't puff his chest or throw threats. He simply positioned himself between them and the woman, his shoulders squared, his feet planted. "I said," Marcus repeated, slower this time, "let her go." The woman yanked her arm free and stumbled back. The men cursed. For a moment, Marcus thought it would turn ugly. He felt the weight of every bad headline he'd ever seen, every warning he'd ever been given. A black man intervening. A child watching. A city that rarely waited for explanations. Sirens wailed in the distance, not close, but close enough to make the men hesitate. "Whatever," one of them muttered. "Not worth it." They backed away, melting into the rain like cowards always did when things got real. The woman slid down the wall, sobbing now, shaking so hard Marcus thought she might collapse completely. Marcus turned back to Lily. Her eyes were huge, but she was still standing where he left her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then ran forward and hugged his leg with all her strength. The woman looked up at him. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know what would've." "You're safe now," Marcus said. He offered her his jacket without thinking. "Do you need me to call someone?" She shook her head. "No. Thank you." Marcus nodded once. He didn't wait for praise. He took Lily's hand and crossed the street back toward home, his heart still pounding. Behind him, the woman watched them disappear into the rain. She didn't know his name. She didn't know that Marcus Reed lived in a small apartment with peeling paint and unpaid bills. She didn't know that he'd once dreamed of more, before life narrowed his world to one small girl and the promise he made the day her mother died. But someone else saw them that night. From the back seat of a black car parked across the street, a man in a tailored suit lowered the tinted window just enough to see clearly. He had watched everything. And by morning, the CEO would begin asking one question over and over again. By morning, Marcus Reed was back where heroes were invisible. No cameras. No applause. Just steel shelves, aching muscles, and a time card that didn't care what he'd done the night before. But somewhere across the city, a CEO was replaying that moment again and again. The warehouse smelled like oil and cardboard, the air buzzing with forklifts and shouted instructions. Marcus clocked in at 6:02 a.m., same as always, his jacket still damp from the night before. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face, fearful, then proud, as she clutched his leg. "You did the right thing," she told him before bed, her voice small but certain. Marcus had kissed her forehead and prayed she was right. Now he stacked crates in silence, his mind elsewhere. Across the city, in a glass-walled office overlooking the skyline, Jonathan Hale stood perfectly still. Jonathan Hale was not a man easily shaken. As CEO of Hale Dynamics, he had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, dismantled competitors with a sentence, and survived scandals that ruined lesser men. Control was his language. But control had slipped from his hands the night before. On his desk sat a paused security video. Grainy. Rain-streaked. A street corner at night. Jonathan pressed play. He watched the woman pressed against the wall. The two men circling. The way no one else slowed down. Cars passed. Pedestrians looked away. Then pause. Jonathan leaned forward. There. A man stepping into the frame. Tall. Worn jacket. A child's backpack slung over one shoulder. Jonathan played it again. And again. The way the man positioned his body. The way he moved the child behind him before saying a word. Calm. Controlled. Protective. Not reckless. Responsible. "Find him," Jonathan said quietly. His assistant hesitated. "Sir? The man with the child?" Jonathan repeated, eyes still locked on the screen. "I want to know who he is. Was there a crime reported?" "No," Jonathan said. "That's the point." By lunchtime, the woman from the video sat in a private conference room, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "My name is Elena," she said softly. "I don't know why I'm here." Jonathan sat across from her, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Not as a CEO now, but as a man who'd once been helpless too. "You were attacked last night," he said. "And someone intervened." Elena nodded, eyes filling. "He saved me. Tell me about him." She smiled through tears. "He didn't act like a hero. He acted like a father." That word hit Jonathan harder than he expected. Back at the warehouse, Marcus's supervisor waved him over. "Reed," he said. "You expecting company?" Marcus frowned. "No." A man in a suit stood near the loading dock, completely out of place among steel-toed boots and pallets. He held a tablet, scanning faces until his eyes landed on Marcus. "Marcus Reed?" the man asked. Every head turned. Marcus's stomach dropped. "Yeah? I'm here on behalf of Jonathan Hale." Marcus stared at him. "I don't know anyone by that name." The man smiled politely. "He knows you." Fear crept in. Had someone complained? Had the men from last night? "I can't leave," Marcus said quickly. "I'm working. This won't take long," the man replied. "Mr. Hale would like to speak with you." Marcus shook his head. "I've got a daughter. And that," the man said gently, "is exactly why." An hour later, Marcus sat in a car he was afraid to touch, his hands folded tightly in his lap. The city blurred past the window, every turn pulling him farther from the life he understood. Why is he doing this? Marcus asked. The man glanced at him. Because he saw you do something most people don't. At Hale Dynamics, Marcus felt small. The building rose like a monument to a world he'd never been invited into. Polished floors. Quiet power. Money you could feel in the air. Jonathan Hale stood when Marcus entered. They stared at each other for a long moment. I didn't do anything special, Marcus said before the silence could swallow him. You stood between danger and a stranger. Jonathan interrupted. With your child watching. Marcus swallowed. I didn't want her to learn to walk away. Jonathan nodded slowly. Neither did I. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos. The street. The rain. Lily holding Marcus's hand. How did you? Marcus started. I make it my business to know the people who remind me who I used to be, Jonathan said. Marcus stiffened. If this is about money, it's about opportunity, Jonathan corrected. For you. And for your daughter. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. Outside the office, the city moved on, unaware that two lives were about to change forever. And Marcus Reed had no idea that saying yes, or no, would cost him more than he'd ever imagined. Marcus thought the hardest part of being brave was the moment you stepped forward. He was wrong. The hardest part was deciding what to do when bravery opened a door you never planned to walk through. The folder on the table felt heavier than it should have. Marcus stared at it, then at Jonathan Hale, then back at the city through the floor-to-ceiling glass. Everything in this office looked permanent, like decisions were made here that couldn't be undone. That scared him more than the men in the alley ever had. I don't understand, Marcus said finally. Why me? Jonathan leaned back, folding his hands. Because you didn't calculate risk. You calculated responsibility. Marcus shook his head. Responsibility is making sure my daughter eats. Making sure she's safe. I can't afford, whatever this is. Jonathan nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. Tell me about Lily. Marcus hesitated. He didn't talk about his daughter to strangers, especially powerful ones. But something in Jonathan's voice wasn't prying. It was familiar. She's 8, Marcus said quietly. She loves drawing, hates loud noises, and thinks every stray cat needs a home. Her mom passed when she was 3. Since then, it's just been us. Jonathan's expression softened, just enough to let something old show through. I lost my father when I was young, he said. Different circumstances. Same hole. Silence settled between them. I'm not offering you charity, Jonathan continued. I'm offering you a job. Marcus blinked. A job? Security operations, Jonathan said. Training, coordination, risk assessment. You demonstrated instincts you can't teach. Marcus let out a humorless laugh. I work in a warehouse. And before that? Jonathan asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. I was in the army. 8 years. Infantry. Jonathan nodded once. There it is. Marcus felt exposed. He hadn't mentioned that part of his life in years, not since Lily was born. Not since the nightmares started to feel too real. I left because I didn't want my daughter growing up without a father, Marcus said. So if this is going to put me in danger. It won't, Jonathan said firmly. Not like that. Marcus looked unconvinced. Jonathan slid another document forward. Hours that let you pick your daughter up from school. Full benefits. Childcare support. And a salary that means you don't have to choose between rent and groceries. Marcus's breath caught. It was too much. Too fast. This doesn't happen to people like me, Marcus said. Jonathan met his eyes. It should. Across town, Lily sat in her classroom, coloring carefully inside the lines. When the teacher asked everyone to draw their hero, most kids sketched firefighters or superheroes. Lily drew her dad. She drew him standing tall, arms out, like a shield. When the phone rang at the school office later that afternoon, Lily's name was called over the intercom. Her stomach flipped. She hadn't done anything wrong, had she? Marcus was waiting when she walked in. "Daddy?" she asked, confused. "Why are you here?" He knelt in front of her. "I had a meeting today." Lily tilted her head. "Did you get in trouble?" He smiled softly. "No, baby. I might have gotten lucky." That night, Marcus sat at their small kitchen table, bills spread out in front of him like usual. Only this time, there was something new in the stack, a contract. Lily climbed into the chair across from him. "Are you scared?" she asked. Marcus paused. He hadn't realized how well she could read him. "A little," he admitted. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. "You weren't scared yesterday." He swallowed. "I was. I just didn't show it." She smiled. "That's okay. I can be brave for you today." Marcus laughed, the sound breaking something open in his chest. The next morning, he sighed. What Marcus didn't know was that bravery doesn't just change your life, it challenges the lives around you. At Hale Dynamics, whispers started almost immediately. Why him? Why now? Why a warehouse worker? Some executives smiled to his face and questioned him behind closed doors. Others watched him like he didn't belong. And somewhere else in the city, two men nursed bruised egos and darker thoughts. They remembered the man who embarrassed them. They remembered the child who watched. And they weren't finished. Marcus Reed had stepped into a new world, one with glass walls, hidden enemies, and consequences that followed you home. The same night he tucked Lily into bed, unaware that danger had begun circling again. The danger Marcus thought he'd left behind didn't disappear. It watched. And when it moved, it aimed for the one thing he would always protect first. The call came just after noon. Marcus was still new enough at Hale Dynamics that he felt like a guest in someone else's house. His badge was crisp, his suit unfamiliar, his shoulders tense with the effort of proving he belonged. He was in the middle of a security briefing when his phone vibrated, once, twice, then again. Unknown number. He ignored it. Then the text came. Your daughter left school early today. The room tilted. Marcus stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Conversations died mid-sentence. Excuse me, he said, already moving. Jonathan Hale was on his feet instantly. Marcus. Marcus showed him the phone, hands steady only because panic had burned itself cold. Lily didn't leave school. Jonathan didn't ask questions. He didn't waste time. Lock the floor, Jonathan ordered. Pull school feeds. Now. Within seconds, screens lit up. Cameras. Timelines. Faces sharpened into focus. There, Lily, walking out the front gates. And there, two men lingering across the street. Marcus's breath hitched. He knew those men. Not their names, but their posture, their arrogance, the way they leaned too close to other people's space. The alley? They followed her, Marcus said. His voice didn't shake, but something inside him fractured anyway. Jonathan grabbed his coat. We're getting her. They didn't wait for police. Not yet. Time was bleeding away too fast. The black car tore through traffic, sirens blaring now. Marcus stared out the window, replaying every morning he'd kissed Lily's forehead and told her to go straight inside. Every promise he'd made that she would be safe. This was his fault. At the school, chaos unfolded in fragments. A substitute teacher. A miscommunication. A forged note. Someone who'd planned this. Warehouse guys don't think 3 steps ahead, Jonathan muttered. This was deliberate. They tracked the men to a derelict building near the river. Marcus was already out of the car before it stopped. Marcus, wait, Jonathan warned. I'm not losing her, Marcus said, voice like iron. Inside, the air smelled of rust and mold. Footsteps echoed. A child's sob. Daddy! Lily's voice cut through the dark. Marcus ran. One of the men stepped out, shoving Lily behind him. Thought you forgot us. Marcus slowed, not because he was afraid, but because Lily was crying, her small body trembling. "Let her go," Marcus said. The man laughed. "You embarrassed us. Cost us face." Jonathan appeared behind Marcus, phone raised. "This ends now." The second man grabbed Lily's arm. Marcus moved. Everything he'd ever trained for snapped into place. Not rage, not recklessness, but precision. He disarmed one man, shielded Lily with his body, and slammed the other into the wall before he could blink. Lily screamed. Sirens wailed outside. When it was over, Marcus knelt, hands shaking now, pulling Lily into his chest. "I've got you," he whispered over and over. "I've got you." Police swarmed the building. Later, under flashing lights and official questions, Lily refused to let go of Marcus's jacket. The officer finally said, "Your daughter saved herself by remembering what you taught her." Marcus closed his eyes. That night, Lily slept in Marcus's bed, curled against him like she was afraid the world might reach through the walls. Jonathan stood in the doorway. "You should take some time off." Marcus shook his head. "I won't run." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Good. Because what you did today, it doesn't stay quiet." News cameras had already started circling. By morning, a headline would spread across the city. "Single father stops abduction, CO involved." And Marcus Reed would wake up to a world that knew his name. But attention has a price. And tomorrow, Marcus would learn that being seen can be more dangerous than being invisible. By the time the city called him a hero, Marcus Reed only wanted one thing: to keep his daughter safe in a world that suddenly knew his name. But the moment that changed everything had already begun. The news vans lined the street before sunrise. Marcus stood at the window, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching reporters rehearse smiles and sound bites. His phone buzzed nonstop, unknown numbers, messages he didn't open, a life that no longer felt like his. Behind him, Lily sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest. "Are they mad at you?" she asked softly. Marcus turned. "No, baby. They're just loud." She nodded, unconvinced. At Hale Dynamics, Jonathan Hale had already made his decision. When Marcus arrived, escorted this time, he found the entire executive floor waiting. Cameras. Board members. Faces that once questioned his presence now watched him with something like respect and fear. Jonathan stepped forward. "Today," he said, voice carrying, "we're announcing the creation of the Hale Community Shield Initiative." Murmurs rippled. "It will provide rapid response protection, survivor support, and community safety programs, starting with the neighborhood where this began." Jonathan turned to Marcus. "And it will be led by the man who reminded us why courage still matters." Marcus froze. "This isn't about me," he said quietly. Jonathan smiled. "That's why it is." Later that afternoon, Marcus stood in front of microphones, his hand resting on Lily's shoulder. His voice didn't boom. It didn't need to. "I didn't wake up trying to be brave," Marcus said. "I woke up trying to be a dad." The clip went viral within hours. But the moment that mattered most came that evening. The woman from the alley, Elena, stood waiting outside Marcus's building, holding flowers and shaking hands. "I wanted Lily to see me safe," she said. Lily stepped forward and hugged her without hesitation. That night, after the city quieted, Marcus tucked Lily into bed. "Daddy," she whispered, "if it happens again, will you help?" Marcus kissed her forehead. "Always." Outside, the city kept moving. Crime didn't vanish. Fear didn't disappear. But somewhere, a single act of courage had created a ripple. And it started with a little girl who believed her father could stop the world.